this is Jenna Burt, host of the Confessions of a Military Spouse podcast. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
How's it going, everybody?
Hey guys,
This is Keith.
and Katie from Coffee with Keith and Katie on Public House Media.
Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. And when you're done with this show, I hope you'll come check out our show, Coffee with Keith and Katie,
Where we talk about our daily adventures over a nice cup of coffee.
A new show comes out every Monday at 7 p.m. live on Public House Media's Facebook page. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hello everyone, it is No Filter Friday on Public House Media, and I'm very concerned that my countdown's not going. Normally I have a time that pops up, but maybe because I'm doing it from my phone? I don't know. We'll see how this goes. But anyway, I'm here with a full can of LaCroix, looking ratchet as I want to be, because I am in Catalina. This is the first show that I'm doing from, I don't know, definitely the farthest from my house that I've done it, for sure. Because I think every other time that I've been, like, out. Hello, thank you for coming in. I'm hoping it's David Bobke. Is it? I mean, if it's not, I'm still happy. But if it is David Bobke, can you please tell me if it sounds okay? And also, if you're coming in, share the broadcast, because when I do it on my phone, I can't share it, and that sucks. Because when I do it from my laptop, when I'm just sitting at my desk doing the things, I can do it on one tab and then slide over to the other tab and share it, all that fun stuff. But anyway, it's gonna get crazy. It's gonna get so crazy because this week has been crazy for everybody, like me too or not, but Lord have mercy. The craziness. And I'm so glad that I was able to do this. Hello, other person coming in. It's Luis Francisco, my buddy. But I'm so happy that we get to do this live, because I've been missing doing the show live, and then everybody's been talking about Michael Jackson and R. Kelly and all these people, all this molestation, all this craziness, stealing people's children, all of that. And I wanted this. This is what I wanted, this back and forth that we do live on the show. Oh, I couldn't leave it behind. So I was thinking about, if you saw my post earlier, I was thinking about doing the show live and earlier, or pre-taped and on time, and now we get the best of both worlds. I'm in Catalina at the Hermosa Hotel getting my my scuba diving certification, which is going to be crazy because it's so cold. It's crazy cold. I don't know what prompted me to do this at this time of the year. Like, Black Friday coupons are all well and good until you have to use them and it's still cold out. So it's the life that I'm living. Anyway, this R. Kelly stuff keeps getting crazier and crazier. If you've seen the documentary Surviving R. Kelly, if you haven't, it kind of doesn't matter, because we've been knowing what R. Kelly has been up to for quite some time now. Like, between Dave Chappelle and the jokes that we have about him, which now, kind of reflecting on it, is probably in poor taste because people have been peed on. Sound is good. Oh, yay! And it's already dripping with juicy details. Wonderful. Fantastic. Oh, those are my favorite. Juicy dripping details are my favorite kind of details. How crazy is that? So, I mean, we've had these things, and then if you haven't seen R. Kelly standing over Gayle King, yelling and crying and all this, like, in my opinion, and I think a lot of people echo this sentiment, like, nothing screams, I'm sorry that I got caught, more than this kind of behavior. Like, it's, seriously, you gotta scream, you gotta cry, like, no. He's upset, much like it's kind of like, It reminds me of like Harvey Weinstein's, open apology or whatever. It's like, growing up in the 60s and 70s, we just got to act this way. And we never thought that the internet would come along and, people would be like, hey man, so as it turns out that you can't do that to people. You can't, snatch them from their parents underage and take them on tour and then God knows what. But it just gets more embarrassing for him by the day. Like, he just needs to just rein it in. Just close this here and scamper away into the night and leave his hoe train behind. Hoe train goes this way, R. Kelly goes this way. That's probably the best thing for him to do. But anyway, let's get into this Michael Jackson situation because it is nasty. It is nasty, kids. Like, I never for a minute thought that, like, these people were going to get the pushback that they did. And I guess I should have anticipated it because of all the people standing outside his gate and outside the courthouse being like, he's innocent. Meanwhile, they don't know this man. They've never spent any time with them. They don't know anybody that spent any time with them. They're just a fan of the music and, they've proclaimed his innocence based on that, which is sad that happens. It's just gross. The whole thing is just gross. But this is why I say this particular episode of No Filter Friday is adults only, because we're going to deal with some complex emotions here that require a grown adult mindset, which is these days very hard to find. And I'm also going to be spilling the most tea that I've ever spilled. Ever. We're telling his business, their business, my business is going to come out, all that stuff. Ooh, all of it, everybody's business. So, throughout watching Leaving Neverland, I saw some things and I heard some things in the documentary that I've seen personally, like some of the B-roll that they've shot and some of the stories and stuff that they told. I've either seen it with my own eyes or heard it from a very good source. When they talk about him being so giggly and so childlike and this, that, and the other thing, that's true. Like, I've heard that from a lot of people, namely Joey Fatone, me, Stephen, Joey Fatone, Eric from O-Town, Nick Lachey, Alfonso Ribera, and Pat O'Brien. We made this like pilot for a show a couple years ago, and the story for that is crazy enough as it is. But one of the things we got to talking about while we were making that show was what's like, we just asked everybody, like, what was their different, like, story about, whatever weird person. And Joey's just took the cake, dude. Took the cake up one side and down the other. This is an amazing story, and I hope you're ready for it. So he said that back in the NSYNC days, that they were at some big show, that had, tons and tons and tons and tons of big people performing. And so everybody's got their own dressing rooms and they're all connected to some big, big, big venue, right? And he said that they're in their dressing room, getting ready, getting their voices tuned up. Everybody's warmed up. Everybody's getting ready to go. And they're like, we keep hearing giggling outside, like little girls giggling. And they're like, they're getting upset about it. Like, who got their kids in here? Like, this is ridiculous. Who's got their kids in here? So they open the dressing room door and stick their head out. And Michael Jackson has Elizabeth Taylor in her wheelchair going up and down the halls, pushing her in her wheelchair up and down the halls, and she's going, wee, wee, and they're having a blast. And I think if you watch Finding Neverland and you listen to the stories that these people told, like, I've heard that before. It's right on par. His giggly, weird self pushing Elizabeth Taylor in her wheelchair up and down the halls of this, just giggling, just having a blast. And I'm like, you know what? He was. I mean, look at Joe Jackson. Look at the way Joe Jackson still looks at all of his kids that are, grown fulfillionaires. He's still got that eye, the Joe Jackson eye. And quite frankly, this is just my opinion on this, but the fact that Joe Jackson is constantly, whenever he's in the media, is constantly flanked on either side with Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson makes me nervous, because that means that something's going down. Those two don't show up without a paycheck, so they're getting paid for something somewhere. And whatever that something somewhere is makes me nervous for their whole situation. That is no secret that the Jackson kids were absolutely abused by Joe Jackson, and God knows who else, in the meantime, in the interim that came through. And Michael got the worst of it because, quite frankly, he was the most talented. I mean, God love Janet Jackson. She's awesome. I got a nipple that pops out too. We're soul sisters. I get it. But obviously Michael Jackson was, the thing of the Jackson 5. So I think he probably got he took the brunt of this abuse because he was either the most talented, going to be the biggest deal, became the biggest deal, whatever. And that becomes a problem for people, or it becomes enticing. It just puts a target on their back. And that is really sad. But this is what I'm going to throw at you now. 97% of males that are sexually abused as children end up becoming pedophiles themselves, end up abusing more children. And it's really, really, really unfortunate, but that's the way that it is. And it's an exponential problem when one person gets molested or gets, sexually abused or raped or whatever, whatever category it falls under, it doesn't matter. It is an exponential problem because hurt people, and it keeps moving and it keeps going. It's like this web of dark abuse, and it's really, really gross. It's wrong. So Wade Robinson and James Safechuck are alleging that Michael Jackson sexually abused them from 7 to 14, basically. And although people are up in arms about it, I don't really understand why, because these are all stories that we've heard before. Maybe not quite as explicitly, and to be fair, I'm very desensitized to explicit stories of sexual abuse because I have been around the world interviewing survivors of sex crimes and gender-based violence. And I've heard the nitty-gritty of it. I've seen all of the things. I've had people send me pictures of their STDs, their medical records, all that stuff to really explain the situation. And admittedly, I am desensitized by it. Which, I mean, maybe for the purposes of the show is better, but I can understand why people are so taken aback by that aspect of it. But the truth of the matter is that neither one of these stories is something that we haven't heard before. We knew that Michael Jackson was keeping kids in his bed with him, or their parents were dropping them off at Neverland, or at any one of his various houses. And whatever happened. And that part shouldn't be shocking. People have been standing up and saying this for a good 20 years now. I mean, the man's been a weirdo my whole lifetime. So I was born in November of 88. So 88 to 98, 98 to 2008, 30 years. He's been a weirdo my whole lifetime. Hands down, for sure. I mean, he's divinely talented. He'll be one of the most prolific singers, dancers, songwriters, recording artists ever to walk the face of the planet and or moonwalk the face of the planet. No one's arguing against that. But with that being said, what do we do about this information that it's not new information to us. It's just extended information. We've been hearing this for years and years and years and years and years. And it's really sad. It's hard to hear. But if you'll remember, I did an episode probably 2 months ago now, where we talked about when you hear something that hurts is probably the truth. Because the truth, what? It hurts. It sucks. That's how it is. And I think when things really, really unfold, or like the real nail in the coffin, whatever it's going to be, is when Macaulay Culkin comes out and makes whatever statement that he makes. Because recently Corey Feldman came out on Twitter, I think. Yeah, it wasn't like even an official statement. He just got on Twitter. It was like, hey, this is my jam. And he talked about, his years with Michael Jackson and how he gave him jackets and, was so influential in his career and his life. And, they were good friends and he was a champion of him, which is 100% true because you know what? Corey Feldman was the same with me. Granted, the man's never gave me any jackets, but I think his stuff's too small for me. I don't know. But while I was watching Finding Never... Oh, hi, Roger Neal. While I was watching Finding Neverland and they're showing all this B-roll of like the stuff that Michael Jackson had given to Wade and to James. I've seen all of that stuff in Corey Feldman's house. All of it. All the, the sign, the posters and the pictures and all this stuff. Corey Feldman's house, his house in Encino, is plastered with that stuff. I've been in the closets. I've been in Corey Feldman's closet. I've seen the jackets that he's given to him. Before that one got stolen from the House of Blues on Sunset, which is no longer with us, which is very sad. And I say these things, I want to make this point very clear. I say these things that I'm about to say with tons of love for Corey Feldman because he's helped me in my life so much. And I'm so happy that I know him and he's been wonderful. And I can totally understand him being like, well, Michael Jackson didn't abuse me. If that did happen to other people, that's terrible. This man's legacy, blah, 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 blah. I get it. However, what he failed to mention, and again, I say this with lots of love for Corey Feldman, but he forgot to bring up his relationship with Corey Haim. And Corey Haim died right down the hill from my house. As a matter of fact, Corey Haim died in the apartment complex, the Oakwoods. It's not called that anymore, but that's like the name, that's been the name for it for a long time. The Oakwoods Apartments that's down between our house on the hill and Burbank, Warner Brothers. I think Rick James died there too. Corey Haim died there, and that apartment complex is modeled, the apartment complex in Big Time Rush, the Palmwoods, is modeled after the Oakwoods. It's like this short-term, halfway house, in, out, who knows, whatever. One of these places. But Corey Haim was deeply, deeply troubled because he was seriously, seriously abused. And the fact that Corey Haim was very abused and Corey Feldman wasn't abused nearly as much, it was the big rift in their relationship, which is really sad. I never knew Corey Haim. My friend Angela was the last actress to play opposite him in a movie. They made this movie called American Sunset. That when they made it, shot it in Canada, coincidentally, and then he died. It got pushed into Cannes. Angela and I went to Cannes, partied super hard, was amazing, so much fun, highly recommend it, favorite place in the world. But when we were coming home from Cannes or Sundance, no, that's when Angela was here for Sundance. So that was Cannes. Cannes in the spring, right? So the following winter, so from May to January, oh yeah, well that, and like, Angela ended up like living in France for like 6 months for a while. But anyway, so the following Sundance, she flew to LA from Canada, and then her and I drove up to Sundance. While we were at Sundance doing the Sundance things, Corey Feldman got a hold of her and was like, hey, we need to talk. And at the time, we kind of took it with a little bit of hostility because he sounded very, somewhere between cryptic and agitated, basically. And we're like, okay. And he kept mentioning Michael Jackson had a magician, I guess, that apparently knows far too much, basically. And he was really, really concerned about her talking to him or her talking at all. It was all Concernicus, 100% Concernicus, basically. So drive home from Sundance, and he's like, okay, like, let's meet. So we go to BOA. If you, still to this day, if you search, if you search like Corey Feldman, like I think that was called yeah, it was Truesdale back then. Because it's across the street from Bo's. We went to dinner at Boa, and then we went across the street, and that's how him and I became friends. Because we don't really. Corey doesn't drink. I don't really drink. And we just like danced and air guitared at Truesdale. After we all became friends at Boa, and he was very, very, very concerned, and I understand the like emotional whirlwind that he was probably going through from Corey Haim dying, and then his own stuff. I think he had recently got divorced, and he has a son, and on wife number 2 or something like that. But anyway, that's how we became friends, was because of him being worried about the Michael Jackson stuff or surrounding Corey Haim's death. But what really struck me, this is where it's going to get nasty. What really struck me about Corey coming out and being like, well, he didn't abuse me. These people, I was around him in the same capacity for so long and he didn't abuse me, blah, 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 blah. Up until recently, I would have agreed with that statement, but I don't anymore, because my uncle is sitting in jail, in prison, in Michigan, for molesting, the 2 daughters of a girlfriend that he had for a long time. He was in jail for like 25 years or something like that. He didn't molest me. He didn't. If I'm being completely honest, he was a great uncle to me. He was. We had a lot of fun, back in the day when we could. And I always wondered, because my uncle's trial came down when I was about 15 or 16. And I always wondered why. I would have been a great witness. I was, on the cusp of being of age. Nothing ever happened to me, because at the time my family was still like, oh, he didn't do anything. They're lying. They're lying. They're lying. They're lying. They're lying. I was kept way, 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 way out of that trial. And they told, several different stories of what happened. And I always wondered up until recently, like, why wasn't I ever called as a witness? Like, if Michael Jackson can get a witness, why can't he? And it seems like I certainly spent, like, I knew him my whole life. He was just, with the mother of those girls for a few years. So my whole life, nothing, never a problem. Until just because someone has a proclivity to one certain thing does not mean that they're a ravenous animal. Just because there's a kid available doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to molest every kid that's in front of them. If there's a pedophile around you, you should probably behave that way, just in case. But the problem is that just like any other situation, I guess we'll say, not everything fits the bill. And I figured it out when some other people that he had molested came to me and was like, yeah, he did this. This is how old we were. This is where it happened. All these express details. And I know what a real regurgitation of a sex crime sounds like, because I've heard them all over the world a time and time and time and time again. I was like, okay, so I wasn't his thing, because his thing is sisters close in age. That's his thing. I don't have a sister, let alone a sister to be close in age to, so I didn't fit the bill. Thank God. Great. Wonderful. But I understand what Corey is saying about, well, I was with him in this capacity for all these years. He was a great friend and mentor to me, and I miss him so much, and he was so talented and so wonderful and so nice to everybody. And I think if you talk to anybody who's ever, worked with him, met him not in like in a meet and greet way, but like met him like personally, like maybe in a work capacity or whatever, they would agree with that statement. He was like, he didn't really ever get mad at anybody. Like, he was always, really, really patient, all that stuff. Like, he did have those qualities to him, but they came into another way. And For a long time, I maintained with my uncle that's like, well, he never did that to me. I didn't see it happen. I don't really know anything about it. I couldn't tell you if he did. I couldn't tell you if he did it. I just know that he's a convicted pedophile who's sitting in prison for 25 years. That's what I know. His rap sheet's 4 pages long. So, with that being said, just because you didn't fit the mold doesn't mean somebody else doesn't. And honestly, like, we've been hearing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again by him. So, for these two in this documentary and Finding Neverland to be lying, that means that it's not just these two that are lying. It's the maid that testified and said, yeah, I saw him naked in the shower with a bunch of kids. Yeah, he's got a closet full of kiddie porn that homemade kiddie porn that he's made himself. In addition to the people that had testified against him earlier, all those years ago. And we knew he kept kids around. That's common knowledge. He even talked about it. I think the famous quote was, the most loving thing you can do is share your bed with someone. That man's got mansions on mansions. He's got more bedrooms than he knows what to do with, and yet he's got a pile of children in his bed. And furthermore, okay, fine, he wasn't doing that. Okay, well then find me someone, grown man, grown woman, I don't care which one it is, that has had a sexual relationship with him. Because I think Priscilla Presley's been pretty, is that her name? Mother of his kids? I know she's a Presley. I'm blanking on her first name though. Anyway, I think everyone's admitted that relationship was a farce and that was just for their kids, which is wonderful. And fine, whatever, however you go about your situations, however you go about your situation. Right after he died, the house that Michael Jackson died in was a rental. He didn't own it. So after he died, and they took the body out, it went back to to the possession of its original owner, right? Well, as it happens, I have a bunch of old-fashioned clients that used to play poker. Well, they still do play poker, mostly on Wednesdays. And that house was owned by one of the guys that they play poker with, and because he didn't live in there, and he just, got this possession of this house back. He invited everybody over for poker, and it was like nothing had been touched, basically. And they, Prince and Paris had, their little drawings and stuff were still on the refrigerator. Yeah, Priscilla Presley. Oh, good, I was right. David Bobke, I got something right. Heck yeah, man. But anyway, so the house still had Prince and Paris's, writing on, little drawings on the fridge, and they said that it said everywhere. It's like, best dad ever, and I won't deny him that. His poor kids, man, they've been through the ringer, buddy. No wonder Paris has, been suicidal at times. I get it, man. I get it. You know what upsets me more than anything is when I'm trying to do the show and people call and text me. It drives me crazy. That's why I do this. When I pre-tape, I put I put my phone on airplane mode so nobody can bother me. And then I go to hit post and it doesn't post on time because my phone is still on airplane mode because people won't close their mouths. It's terrible. I can't stand it. Anyway, it's a really, really sad and horrible situation any way you cut it. And we've talked about this on the show over and over and over and over and over again. Whenever somebody comes out with a story, whether they're lying or it doesn't matter if, who's lying or if it's true, it's all tragic. Because if they are lying, then it's really terrible that they're doing, they're alleging these allegations against some person that will destroy their lives. Or if they're not lying, and that did happen to them, it's basically destroyed their life. So it's a no-win situation any way around. I wasn't there, and I can't definitively say that he's done anything, but the whole where there's smoke, there's fire, rings true. And are we really that shocked that a guy was abused himself repeated the abuse, and we all know good and well that he was keeping throngs of children in his bed with him? I'm not shocked. I'm appalled. I don't like it. I don't enjoy it, but I'm not shocked. So if everybody wants to go on and on and on and clutch their pearls and their feigned outrage and this, that, and the other thing, go ahead. That's fine. But after all these years, after all these decades, I feel like we should pretty well have a handle on what's been happening over these years. Although I will say, it's really underhanded for them to do this after he's passed away. And most of the time, 99.9% of the time, I say however somebody deals with their trauma is up to them, because it's their trauma. They can deal with it how they wish. I have no business telling them how to do that. But in this case, with these two, they provided false testimony, not once, but twice. Once when they were minors. Although minors can be held liable for certain things, they were 13. That's the threshold for rebuttable presumption, so probably not. Okay, even if you throw that one away. Again, they went and gave what they're saying now is a false testimony when someone else was trying to deal with their trauma and trying to get their justice. And that's wrong. And although California is super, super loosey-goosey with, perjury and things like this, it was 100, it was an obstruction of justice. It was ethically 100% wrong for them to give this false testimony and not only stand up and say this person that's accusing, that's launched this, these, accusations against him for molesting him. Not only is that person a liar, but the people testifying saying, yeah, I saw him in the shower with these kids, or yeah, I've seen this, or yeah, I've been exposed to that, or whatever. They're all liars too. It's one thing to hit him with the Hillary and, get on the stand and be like, I don't recall. But to get up and straight lie and say that this, not lie for yourself, and then tell the judge and the jury and the court and the public that all these other people that are testifying are liars too. That is one of the worst types of wrong I can think of. If it's wrong to launch false allegations against somebody, it's just as wrong to give false testimony and to obstruct someone else's justice. It's reprehensible. And I asked my aunt, who's a law professor, and a couple other people on if they could be held liable for that, either criminally or civilly, for perjury, false testimony, obstruction of justice. And apparently it would be up to the prosecution in California and the statute of limitations. And if anybody really wanted to really pick that apart. So then my next question was okay, well, if it was me, if I was the one that filed a case against somebody, and then I had these two bozos come and call me a liar, and then all the rest of the witnesses a liar, and they prevented me from seeking the justice that I am entitled to, I would absolutely sue them for for something. This is crazy. You shouldn't be able to. I don't want to say Luis Francisco. I don't want to sound rude, but I definitely should get into law school. You should. Why not? Go do it, man. Hopefully there's something civilly for those people to do there, because that's just, I can't imagine going through all that trauma and then going through the horrible process that is a trial, especially for sex crimes of a minor. Oh my God. against, one of the biggest superstars that's ever walked the earth. Like, and then he has people come that have endured the same as you. No, you're a liar. This person's a liar. Lies. Knowing damn good and well that it's not. It's unacceptable. I think that's my biggest takeaway from that, is that they got on the stand and gave false testimony. Like, that's, I understand their complicated emotions about loving him and not knowing what was happening to them, and it taking them to become adults to, really sort it out and figure it out. I get it. I understand that. But to stand up and give false testimony is one thing, but did it in a minor. Okay. But as an adult, absolutely unacceptable. Unacceptable. There's people that are sitting in jail for launching false accusations of against people, which they should be. That's where they belong. Filing false police reports, giving false, like, jail is absolutely where they belong. What about these two bozos? Like, are they just going to get a free pass for all this destruction that they have continued? I certainly hope not. But anyway, that is all the tea, kids. That is all the tea. All of it. My tea, their tea, everybody's tea, collective tea, just pots on the floor. I'm dehydrated now because we've spilled all this tea. So I will see you all next week. Share the show, share the podcast, and, give it some stars or a rating or a comment or any of that stuff. And I will see you all next week on Public House Media for No Filter Friday, and check out other shows like Choose to Rise or Crowned and Dangerous or The Cheap Seats, Press Row, all those fun things. Go see them because they're way more fun and not as dirty as this show. So see you later, kids.